The Arctic is melting, and the same political forces that spent decades telling you that climate change is a hoax are now fighting to buy front row seats to the disaster. This is the ultimate geopolitical irony. Climate denialism has now evolved into disaster capitalism. They aren't ignoring the crisis anymore. No, they're actively positioning themselves to profit from the wreckage. In Greenland, the denial of the science has been replaced by the strategy of denial. So in this video, we're looking why the US doesn't actually want Greenland's minerals. It wants something much more cynical. It wants to turn the climate crisis into a geopolitical choke point. Let's dive in. Let's talk about the rare earth smokescreen. Whenever Washington talks about acquiring Greenland, the immediate justification is green energy. The narrative goes, we need Greenland's rare earth for our electric vehicles and wind turbines so we can break dependence from China. This sounds intuitive, but it's also completely false. Because here's the reality that industry experts try to keep explaining to politicians. Greenland currently produces zero rare earth. Not a little bit, zero. And the obstacles aren't just geological, they are infrastructural. Greenland has almost no roads between towns. Its ports cannot handle industrial volumes. And it has a power grid that barely supports its current population. So building a mining complex there would be an environmental and financial nightmare. Furthermore, China doesn't just control the mines. China controls 90% of the processing. Buying Greenland to solve rare earth dependency is like buying a forest because you need paper. And at the same time, your rival owns every single paper mill on the planet. The minerals are a smokescreen. Next, let's talk about the Venezuela Blueprint. If it's not about mining rare earth, then what is it about? It's about ensuring that nobody else gets them. Because this is the new mechanism of imperial power in the 21st century. It doesn't rely on creating abundance, it relies on controlling scarcity. And we saw this pattern recently with Venezuela. The US wasn't trying to steal Venezuela's oil. It was to use sanctions and financial pressures to keep it in the ground. And this, over years, denied Venezuela access to revenue and prevented those resources from flowing to rivals like China. And this is the same blueprint for Greenland. It's extractive without actual extraction. Because if the US controls the territory, it doesn't have to build a single mine. By simply holding the deed, Washington can block Chinese infrastructure projects and ensure that Greenland's resources remain stranded assets. The goal here isn't to use the resources to build a green future. It's to hold them hostage to maintain global dominance. But the biggest irony of this whole situation isn't underground. It's on the ocean surface. Because as the ice sheets collapse as a direct result of the emissions that we're releasing, new shipping lanes are opening up. And that means that the Northwest Passage and the Transpolar Sea Route are becoming viable. And these routes could cut travel times between Asia and Europe by 40%. In a world of high energy costs, this shortcut is worth trillions of dollars. So the powers that be are now treating this ecological disaster as a real estate opportunity. By controlling Greenland, the US is not looking to build a highway. It wants to install a toll booth. Really, they want to control the post-ice Arctic. Because ownership means deciding who sails, what fees are paid, and whose ships get inspected and delayed. They are monetizing the melting of the world. And this is the unsettling logic of climate adaptation under empire. Ecological breakdown becomes an opportunity to reassert strategic advantage. Understanding this is not meant to provoke outrage. It is meant to understand the terrain that we're moving through. There is, however, another map of Greenland if you so want. One that doesn't begin in Washington or Beijing. It begins with the roughly 56,000 people, mostly Inuit, who live there. Because for them, the Arctic isn't strategic real estate. It's their home. And they have shown repeatedly that they're not passive observers in great power competition. In 2021, Greenland's government banned uranium mining. Not because the resources weren't valuable, but because ecological and social safety mattered more. And this points to a very different principle, because climate security doesn't come from ownership. It comes from stewardship, from respecting sovereignty, from recognizing that decisions about climate futures cannot be imposed from above. Nothing about us without us. Nothing about us without us. That idea is not sentimental, it's structural. So what can we take away from this? Greenland is not a prize to be won. It's a place where the future is already arriving, and that unevenly, unfairly and fast. If we treat climate change consequences as business opportunities for declining empires, we don't just lose ice, we lose ethical footing. And understanding these dynamics is not about becoming cynical. It's about becoming precise and clear, because clarity and understanding about how power adapts to crises is a form of climate literacy. And that literacy allows us to resist simple stories in very complex moments. Not with outrage, but with discernment, with our own judgment. And that will only ever be more helpful to us in the days to come. Thank you for joining me today. See you again soon. So building a mining complex there would be a final...